everybody. Welcome to the Whitetail Guy podcast. I'm your host, Will Drahan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to talk about a topic that, there's probably been a million articles, a million videos made on it, and it's scrapes. I remember the first time I saw a scrape, I had to be about 15 or 16. It was on my family farm. They had just opened up that part of the county to deer hunting. They had closed it for 7 or 8 years. My two uncles were with me who had introduced me to deer hunting about 3 years prior. And we were walking down a logging road, pretty thick. If you know anything about southeastern North Carolina, it's a lot of pine thickets and logging roads, sandy soil. But I remember us coming up, and my uncle, I believe it was my Uncle Joe, said, "Look at that scrape." And it was a big palled out area. And, at that time, that was, oh my gosh, it had to be in the late 70s. I'm aging myself now. And they begin to talk about, bucks make that, especially during the rut, and it's really good to hunt over. And by the size of it, we could see the tracks on it. It had just rained the night before. That a pretty good buck had made that scrape or visited that scrape. We were right in that window of November, what we call the rutting moon, the rutting month of November, especially in the Midwest and the Northeast and parts of the South. But I want to talk about scrapes. There's a lot of misinformation out there, whether intentionally or unintentionally. I'm going to kind of, open up the bag for you about scrapes to help you understand the role that they play in the whitetail world and what that means to you as a hunter. How, can you hunt it? Should you hunt it? When should you hunt it? So, basically, if I could give a definition of what a scrape is, it is a scent communication hub. Deer have many ways to communicate: snort wheeze, snorting, grunting, bleating. But the whitetail lives in the scent world. That is where they give and take, give out, receive scent. It tells a lot about when they smell it. Matter of fact, it's been reported that bucks can tell when a doe about 72 hours before she's getting ready to come into estrus. Not all scrapes are created equal. They're all very different. They're all part of deer ecology. And the more you can understand them when you're out scouting or when you're walking to your stand or walking out of your stand, you see one or see two. And the quicker and the better we get at identifying them, it's going to make us more successful and give us, excuse me, let me take a little water, give us a better understanding of what's really happening in the deer woods. So a scrape, if I could give that definition of a scrape, it would be a scent communication hub. Bucks and does both visit scrapes, pee in scrapes, gather intel at scrapes. So it's just not a buck thing, and it's not just a rut thing, although scrapes play a big part in the rut, and they can reveal to us, what stage of the rut that we are in. And I've come to identify there's 4 types of 4 types of scrapes. There's also 4 types of rubs. Maybe I'll make a video about that, for the 4 types of rubs, because I get that question a lot. Should I hunt over this rub? What does this rub mean? But we're going to talk about the 4 types of scrapes. The first scrape that a buck makes, once he sheds his velvet, once it gets rubbed off, they're boundary scrapes. We see them pop up, especially if we're hunting in the early season. Typically, they are on field edges or maybe where 2 types of terrain meet together, maybe conifers and hardwoods, or hardwoods and a cutover. Basically, that testosterone is rising. I mean, it's right. Man, it's matter of fact, I'll give you a little bit of biology on the whitetail. Once they shed their velvet, they're able to breed a doe. Their sperm, they have enough sperm, they're there. But we know does drive the rut. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Does drive the rut because the minute he sheds that velvet is the minute he can breed, and his interest each day as we get closer to November 1st when it peaks, his brain, kind of like when we were about 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, it changes, man. All his focus for the 10 months prior, 9 months prior, has been on food, 11 months maybe, depending on where you're at. 10 months out of the year, food, survive. But when that testosterone gets to that level, he sheds his velvet. His attention slowly but surely starts turning to the girls. So the boundary scrapes, I don't really pay attention to because typically they're not visited very often. They are just, when a buck, he kind of just right to the edge of where he's traveling to or what he's visiting, whether it's a persimmon tree, whether it's a white oak, whether it's a clover plot, whether it's a cut cornfield, it's a boundary scrape. He's announcing to the world, bucks and does, that he's here, as well as it's a part of him starting to get sexually frustrated, okay? I do not pay attention to the early season scrapes. Typically, they're visited maybe the first week or two of the opener of October or middle of September if your bucks start shedding there in September, which most do in the Midwest and Northeast. They don't spend a lot of attention. They don't spend a lot of time there. They may go out and feed, and as they leave or when they come up to a field, they freshen it up, rub their hocks together, pee on their hocks, work the licking branch, and then they go out to the food. So boundary scrapes, like I said, a lot of guys, spend a lot of time on scrapes that are going to be very unproductive. There are some scrapes that are a lot more productive than others. And we're going to talk about that if you'll stay with me here on the Whitetail Guy podcast. So now what happens as we get into the middle of November, bucks bedding areas or core areas are very small, man. They're going to food to bed, bed to food. It's the way God made them. It's the instinct that God gave them. They are conserving energy and fat reserves, food, bed, water, and reverse. And so that's why I don't hunt much I really don't start hunting mornings until around October 22nd, 23rd, 24th, because me going in the afternoons, because the bucks are really bedded really close to their most preferred food, whatever that looks like, and that is varied across the United States. Like I said, muscadine, persimmons, white oaks, clover, chicory, a brassica plot maybe a cut cornfield or a cut bean field. They're bedded very, very close. But what's happening now as we get into the middle of October, more sexual frustration begins to happen. So as he travels from bed to food, from food to bed, he starts making scrapes. It's a great time, or even after season or during mid-season, he starts unraveling his travel pattern to you. But like I said, man, you can really bump them off if you get too close to them. Especially if you go later in the afternoon when they've already up on their feet, they're starting to browse around and mill around before they go out to the preferred food. But travel scrapes, and we're back in the woods. And you're like, man, I know there's a lot of deer that bed up this side of the hill, and you start seeing scrapes lead up to that. That is travel scrapes. And it's a great place in the early season because bucks spend more time there. They spend a little bit more energy and time depositing scent, working the licking branch. Again, more of this issue of trying to get it wider and wider. He's trying to make his presence known to other bucks as well as to the does that are in the area. So travel scrapes are great. But you're going to see they peter off because as we get toward the third week of October, bucks now have expanded that home core area, and they kind of dry up. That's why guys like, well, I had a lot of scrapes there in early October. Now they're, leaves are in them. They're dead. I guarantee you it was a travel scrape. Especially these travel scrapes, how you can recognize them. They'll always be in 2 or 3 intervals every couple of 100 yards. There may be only 6 or 7, but you'll see 1 or 2 here. You go up another 100 yards, there's 1 or 2 there, 1 or 2 there, but they die out as we get toward the third week of October. But early season, if you're trying to pattern a buck, where he's spending a lot of his time, whatever that food source is, and hey man, a lot of times he's on that north side hill. If you can find travel scrapes, this is the time to hunt them. There's about a 2-week window, and then they dry up, okay? The third type of scrape, which is my favorite, is a community scrape. That scrape is visited year-round. I've got thousands of videos, thousands of pictures of bucks and does visiting that scrape from January 1st through December 31st. Whether they've dropped their antlers, whether they're growing their antlers in June, July, and August. And these are set up in the deer over the years have set this up because that's the most high traffic area. 99 times out of 100, it's in a travel corridor where does are going from point A to point B, back to point A, and bucks are doing the same thing. And there's a great intersection of a lot of different trails accessing different things on your property, an apple orchard or a water hole or a soybean field or a clover plot. Those are places, even if they're established, I love setting them up with a scrape rope from Only Scrapes. Those are great places. I don't really hunt them in the early season because they tend to be around a lot of bedded areas. It's just really hard to get in without spooking deer. But around October 23rd, 24th, 25th, I got a camera on it, or I just know there's going to be more bucks and does depositing scent, receiving scent there, and it gets a little hotter, and a little hotter, especially about 3 days before. What I have observed and interpreted, if scrapes all of a sudden just start popping up, I mean, they're everywhere. They're on the field's edge, they're on logging roads, and then especially community scrapes, man, they light up about 3 days before there's a doe or 2 that's getting ready to come into estrus. And now there is a lot of deer, does and different age classes of buck that are depositing scent there and receiving scent. That's when you want to hunt them. They are dynamite, man. Right before that 80% of your does come into estrus, the scrape action is dusk to dawn. It is phenomenal. And it's a great time to rattle. I have seen more bucks, whether observing or whether on a trail camera, fighting around a community scrape than any other place. More than an ag field, more than around a white oak ridge. I have seen more bucks on camera, as well as I've rattled most of my deer around community scrapes because it's such a high traffic area. It's such a high competitive area. It's bound to happen. There's going to be 2 bucks that show up at the same time that are trying to freshen that scrape up and or receive scent that's been deposited. And if they're equally matched, it's typically a pretty good fight. Sometimes it lasts only a minute or 2. Sometimes it's a fight till death. But community scrapes is where I pay my attention, and they're typically really close to doe bedding areas, man. They're really close to doe bedding areas. And in travel corridors where the does come off, wherever, if you know your does are coming off on the north end of your property a lot, I tell you, man, in all season, go in there, find your travel corridor, multiple trails, and I guarantee you're going to find a giant community scrape where the deer visit it year round, and it's a phenomenal time, usually around October 30, 31st through about the November 3rd, 4th, 5th or so. I like to be there, and I like to do all-day hunts. Those are places where I'm going to do an all-day hunt. I'm going to pack me a lunch and carry me an extra battery in my phone in case it goes dead, and hunt there dusk to dawn, or dawn to dusk. So the last one, it's called a rut scrape, and a lot of people get confused by that and say, I want to hunt that. What happens if you've never seen this? It happens. Have you ever just walked in the woods, especially you guys that hunt public, or you've hunted a part of your property you don't really go into, but there's a lot of seeking and chasing, the rut is happening, a lot of good signs on your camera, a lot of sightings from your stand, and all of a sudden you're like, man, where did that scrape come from? There's no rhyme or reason. And then you kind of walk back in, and there's another scrape. Those are what I call rut scrapes. If you've never seen this, it's really cool to see, especially, man, right when what we call lockdown, when the 80%, all of the 80% is now just about coming to estrus. Bucks are so sexually frustrated, or they have just come off of a doe, and he's been with her 28 hours or so. He just, as he's walking, you've seen it, man, he's foaming, he's bristled up, he's got a bad attitude, and he just walks over there and starts pawing the ground and pees in it, and he makes a scrape. Probably never to see it again. And he'll do that several times as he starts that seeking, trying to find that next doe that's in estrus, or she's in estrus, and he's going to try to challenge that buck. I don't pay a lot of attention. It's cool to see from the stand, but I don't invest a lot of my hunting energy into that because they're so sporadic and they typically are never revisited. So what can you gather from the podcast so far is that, number one, all scrapes are not created equal, that there are different types of scrapes, and there are scrapes that you can hunt over at the right time. A lot of guys, and I've heard it, 100 times plus, man, I hunted over that scrape, it got cold, and I never saw a buck. Well, it's probably either, God forbid it be a boundary scrape, and like I said, them are typically on the edges of his core area as he's traveling about, he's shed his velvet, them grow cold the fastest, the quickest, and a lot of guys, I think, find travel scrapes, early season scrapes, when the bucks were going from bed to food, food to bed, and they're hunting over it because they found it, and they never see a buck, and no buck, it just basically dries up. What I try to do with consultation clients is help them set up community scrapes and or find community scrapes and set up to hunt them, because those are the most productive during the rut, that time of the year. They are phenomenal. Even as the last 10% come into estrus, at the end of the rut, those community scrapes can be on fire because the bucks have been sexed up now for about 3 weeks or so. And they are going to go to that community scrape. They're going to deposit urine, scent. They're a little frustrated. They smell a little estrus in the air. And there's one doe that's kind of coming into estrus. And man, I tell you, late season, when I say late season, I'm talking about the latter part of the rut, also can be very, very productive. But you've got to identify them, and you've got to be able to hunt them at the right time. And boy, I tell you, another great place, a great time, especially to hunt over travel scrapes and community scrapes, is after a rain. After a rain, it seems like those bucks, man, they just can't stand it. Especially the longer the rain duration. The longer the rain is, or the rain event, the longer the duration of the rain event happens, boy, the more they put into their heart and soul in freshening up those scrapes. Those are great times. And if you know this fall, you've got 2 or 3 days of rain, it's pouring, cats and dogs I don't hunt in the rain, especially in bow season. Just simple fact, I have more respect to shoot a deer and then lose the blood. But I know when it stops within the hour, especially a longer rain event, they get up and move, and especially we're in the middle toward the end of October or the first part of November, they get up, man, even to the middle of November, they got to freshen up them scrapes, and it's a great time to ambush a buck. So put that in your utility belt and remember to do that this fall. Anything else? I believe I've covered a lot. I mean, I could go deeper and deeper, but there's so much out there about scrapes. But here's the question I get. I'm going to kind of close the podcast with this. How much time should I invest in scrapes? At the right time, a lot. But I believe guys miss the opportunity to hunt it at the right time. And when you do that, it gets very frustrating. I mean, I've had guys just inbox me and said, man, I thought I was going to see bucks, man, but I saw nothing. The leaves now have covered it up. And I try to help them. They tell me where it's at, where it's set up, and it was 99 out of 100 times it's a travel scrape. And those were going to go cold as we get to the middle toward the third week or so of October. Community scrapes is what you want to find, and the time of the year to find them is in the off season, or try to create one. You can create one. You know where a lot of does bed out. You know that they use that travel corridor to go out to whatever the preferred food is. Then you can create one. Hang your rope 36 to 38 inches off the ground. Clear out 3 or 4 feet. Make it look like it's been there for years. And please don't hang your camera right on the scrape. Hang it about 8-10 yards off so you can gather a lot of intel. Let me say this, because I've argued with people. You know, I run a lot of cellular cameras and trail cameras. People, it scares deer. It does not. It's the setup, I guarantee you. And people have sent me the videos, and they set it up about 4 or 5 feet from the scrape. When a buck, especially if there's a big bully buck or he's a little lower in the hierarchy, when they come up, most bucks anyway, unless, man, they are number 1 or 2 in the area, when they approach a scrape, an active scrape, they're on edge already. They're already spooky because they know if they get caught to a more dominant buck, there's going to be a fight. So that's why they kind of come in and they're already on edge, and then there's something unusual now hanging about 3 feet from this scrape that wasn't there, and they get on edge. You know, whitetails are on edge animals anyway, man. They're very flighty, spooky, scary animals. So back your cellular cameras off of the scrapes. Gather intel. So, oh man, he comes up from that west side and then he comes in. Or he comes up from the east side and then he comes in. So back your camera up 8-10 yards. And don't hang it up high. I know people in public, they like to steal stuff. I mean, that's where we are in society. Hang it about 36, 38 inches to get all that intel and catch where that deer is really coming from and what's really happening behind a scrape or in a food plot. Not way up where you're only catching about 6 feet. You don't have no idea where that deer has come from or where he's going, because we've all seen it, right? They come up to a scrape from this side and then they go out this way. Or they came in this way and went around the tree and came in this way, and we think that the buck came from the east side when he actually came from the west side. So make sure you've got branches 36 to 38 inches high. Travel corridors is the best place to hang a community rope at. It's a great place to start a community scrape. If you haven't found one, or maybe you're hunting public, you want to do one, and there's a lot of trails, man, in and out. And you're like, man, every time I've ever walked that property, I know them deer are over here. And I know that there is some ag, or there's a white oak grove over here. I know they're going from that bedding in here. Find you a travel corridor, find you a couple of branches, hang that rope. Like I said, 36, 38 inches is premium. That's what we found out. Too high, they don't pay they don't pay as much attention. Too low, not as much. A buck, when he comes up to a scrape, he wants to be able to work that rope and rub his forehead gland, his preorbital gland. He wants to be able to chew it a little bit. He wants to be able to hook it up, and without much effort, he can do that. And we found that spot to be 36 to 38 inches high. Anyway, thank you so much for joining the Whitetail Guy podcast. More podcasts this month. As we get into hunting season, they'll get a little sparse because I've got to do a little hunting, but I'll try to make as much as possible. Like, share, comment, follow us on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as YouTube, where you have found this podcast. As I always say, I'll be here next time you come back. I promise.